What's up, everyone? We're here for another week of Locked On Bucks, and it's been a big couple of days. If you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, a big win over the Chicago Bulls, a big win over the Phoenix Suns a little bit earlier today. The Bucks have a 4-game winning streak going. There's been some massive performances along the way, plenty to break down. So let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. Joining me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. As always, thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every weekday. And I emphasize the Monday to Friday because I get it. You know, the Bucks have a big win on Friday night. Everyone's out there looking for that post-game pod. They want to hear Kane and Frank breaking this thing down, specifically Frank. And I rejected Frank. Frank sent me a message and said, look, I would be interested in podcasting if you're free. I wasn't, so you can direct the blame at me. But we're here now to talk about it. The Bucks beat the Bulls 118-12. Now they beat the Suns 132-122. And before we dive right into it, Frank, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. But hey, this has probably been the most enjoyable week of the season, of the regular season. They beat Miami in a close game. They beat the Bulls in a close game. They beat an undermanned Phoenix in a close game as well. But we've discussed it, Frank, the clutch stats. They were ranked 29th just in total clutch minutes. They just hadn't had a lot of reps in this situation. 3 straight games, they were able to pull it out. And for this game specifically with Phoenix, you do it in a night where Giannis doesn't have his usual dominant impact. He fouls out of the game. You get a classic Khris Middleton performance, and Jrue Holiday in the fourth quarter has been out of this world over the last couple of games here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at all the games. I mean, the Charlotte game was a pretty comprehensive blowout, but the 3 games since, Miami, Chicago, Phoenix, definitely things you can nitpick about all of these games, right? I think principally, you look at just the opponent scoring and the Bucks defense sort of from a 48-minute perspective, definitely left some things to be desired. And again, today, the Suns, even without their 2 dominant guards in Chris Paul and Devin Booker, Cam Johnson was also out today. They still scored a ton. They still scored with ease for most of the game. But once again, we've talked a lot about, when you talk about like quarter stats, things like that, we always focus on the third quarter swoon and the problems the Bucks have had in third quarters. We saw it again on Friday in Chicago, where they gave up a big run in the third quarter. But certainly over the past week, the new theme has been the Bucks closing games out in the fourth quarter and showing that they can come back from fourth quarter and not panic, play like a team that's been there before, which they definitely have, and kind of play through different scenarios in different games, whether it's opponents shooting really well from 3, whether it's tonight, very strangely, Giannis having a completely MIA second half, foul trouble being certainly part of it, but overall just not even really getting shots. Only 2 points scored in the entire second half, which is crazy for a guy that is the NBA's leading scorer in fourth quarters and in second half. So very strange kind of Giannis story tonight. But for the most part, I think the resolve in these fourth quarters, especially of these last 3 games, has been an encouraging thing to see, and just a reminder that yes, this team, doesn't panic. We've seen turnovers be issues in first halves and sloppiness be issues. And oftentimes when they have the third quarter problems, they get really sloppy with the ball. We saw tonight, sure, that first half was super sloppy, just lots of unforced errors, turnovers, creating points for the Suns going the other way. Give the Phoenix defense credit. And tonight, again, they just cleaned it up in the second half. And, for Khris and Jrue to both be monsters in the fourth quarter tonight, really picking up the slack for Giannis and his struggles. And Jrue doing it twice in as many games. Drew's not a guy that we normally look at and say like, oh, he's, a super clutch fourth quarter guy. And in fact, had some problems in those Philly and Brooklyn games when the Bucks blew leads. So just, I think, good to see them as a team responding and closing out against a number of good teams, including a huge comeback against Miami. And obviously great to see Jrue and Khris finding their form. We know what Giannis can do. Giannis has been playing on a different level for most of the past few months. So to see Khris and Jrue both playing at a high level collectively is really important, especially when we look at how little help they've often had from the bench. Although today actually was a bit of a pleasant surprise in that we actually had some contributions from the bench for the Bucks in the form of Serge Ibaka and Jordan Nwora. So yeah, I mean, again, if you talked to us after the Nets game and told us we were going to see the Bucks go 4-0 this week, I think we would have said, damn, that's the best case scenario. And honestly, I'm not even going to worry that much about how they do it. Get 4 wins up on the board, and just continue to kind of, hashtag get better every day, right? Build good habits, all of Giannis's favorite cliches. And, just keep trying to claw your way up the Eastern Conference standings. And sure enough, now in third, and not far off the 2 seed here, with Philly, I think 2 losses up on them for the 2nd seed. So yeah, good, very good finish to a week. Maybe not the most convincing week game to game, but overall, the point right now is just getting some consistency, winning games. And certainly you look at what the Bucks are able to do. Hard to really, have some serious complaints over the past week.
You mentioned the bench contributions, and we can come back to Jordan Nwora a little bit later in the podcast. Probably not the number one topic of conversation, but he had some moments in this game and was playing some really important minutes. And part of the reason is because obviously there's no George Hill. Wes Matthews was another out. Pat Connaughton's out. And we should say perhaps the most optimistic thing that we've seen from Brook Lopez all season. The reason why it felt like he was not close to playing was because we never saw anything. He's out there warming up before games now. And some people would sit there and say, well, it doesn't look like he's doing anything too strenuous. But when you see Brook Lopez, that's him at full speed on some of those hook shots that we're seeing pre-game. So we should keep that in account. But your point that the Bucks were able to dig themselves out of holes, or the guys like Middleton and Jrue Holiday, obviously Khris tonight with 44 points was ridiculous. But I do watch this team, and we said there hasn't been a lot of opportunities to do so, and part of it is just the personality of these guys. But they have had the experience now in this game. I was trying to look for a GIF in the fourth quarter of someone just taking their repeated punches in the head and not falling over, because Phoenix, despite the fact they didn't have Chris Paul, despite the fact they didn't have Devin Booker, every time it looked like the Bucks maybe were going to go on this run, Cam Payne would hit a 3. Mikal Bridges started hitting shots in the fourth quarter, and they got it back up to that 5-point margin. It felt like about 15 times in this game. Finally, though, the Bucks were able to break them. And, like you said, for all the issues that Middleton's had in terms of being a little bit out of form, perhaps missing some shots. Again, we've discussed that he really hasn't had a break. Maybe, even though he was at All-Star weekend, maybe just a mental recharge, maybe a few days off, that extra week, he's come back. The Bucks said that they wanted to lock in, but Middleton tonight would have been giving Phoenix Suns fans some nightmares with some of the shot making he had late in this game. He absolutely took over. And this Bucks team have spoken about it. You did the tweet. Everyone's giving you the credit, Frank. Now would be a good time for the Bucks to flip a switch. Again, I'm not sure that they've done it totally on the defensive end, but certainly through stretches in the fourth quarter, you see them lock in. And those turnovers that were a problem, that was the reason that Phoenix were winning. The points off turnovers at halftime, incredibly, by the end of this game, points off turnovers is 27-24, which is, in the end, it was almost even. The Bucks tidied it up, and they were able to get a win.
Yeah, and I thought, one of the things that we saw these past 2 games really, last year, so much of the theme of their success in the playoffs was playing with size, being able to use their physicality on the offensive boards and the defensive boards, and sort of dictate sort of the terms of engagement, dictate the trenches, if you will. In this game, Serge Ibaka, 6 offensive rebounds. I mean, the first Friday night and the first quarter, call it, of Serge Ibaka today, feeling like pretty washed for Serge Ibaka.
He went through that stage the other night. Was it the Bulls game where he just kept on chucking up mid-range jumpers? And I was like, what is happening here at the moment?
And he just had these stretches where it just doesn't seem like he's putting up a whole lot of resistance defensively.
Yeah.
But you just look at kind of the way he kind of grew into this game, finishes with 14 points on 10 shots, 10 rebounds, 6 of those on the offensive glass, a couple blocks, +8 in 22 minutes. And in the fourth quarter, I think he had a block. He had a really nice block that kind of kept the crowd really engaged. And I think the ball went out of bounds. And then I think he got subbed out actually, like right after the block to bring Giannis back in. But this is kind of one of these questions with Serge, with the back, with where he is age wise. And potentially this is a preview of Brook Lopez, right? Another guy coming back from a back injury. Especially in the regular season, we'll see in the playoffs, like, is the problem not that they can't get to good levels, but they just can't do it consistently? That's obviously one of the things you often hear people talk about when you look at players aging. And what's really a challenge, is the problem that they can never be awesome anymore? These really good players as they age? No, it's usually just that they can't do it consistently. Their bodies just don't cooperate, and kind of let them do that. And with Serge, I think there have been some promising moments, but for the most part, and I would say the experience thus far since the trade has been pretty underwhelming. I think the upside for Serge is that ultimately he's still a big body. He's smart. He's got good touch. Him even at sort of half speed, especially in the regular season, probably can still help you night to night, at least in certain matchups. But I would say so far, still a lot to see. Let's just say I think the Baca experience so far has not convinced me that, like, oh, don't worry, Brook Lopez, we don't need you. We're fine, right? We got that third big. Don't worry about it. It definitely has me nervous because Brook's coming back from a back injury as well. So we'll just kind of see what happens. But obviously, really good to see Brook continuing to progress and actually progressing in ways that we can now see on the court. And Bud and others who have been hush hush about him here over the for months now, basically throughout the regular season, are now kind of obviously letting on that he's getting closer and closer to potentially a return. So we'll see when that happens. We'll see how quickly he can ramp up. But in the meantime, certainly Serge Ibaka being able to use his size and help inflict his will a little bit on the glass, if nothing else, maybe protect the rim a bit, is important given some of the challenges the Bucks have had. And you look at the numbers tonight: 40% offensive rebound rate, 14 offensive rebounds, not the most ever or anything like that, but considering the Bucks weren't missing shots, 14 offensive rebounds was a big deal. And 85% defensive rebound rate versus 15% offensive rebound rate for the Suns and 60% defensive rebound rate. Obviously, just the inverse of the numbers I just quoted you. That's how you rack up a 48-27 rebounding advantage, is by doing it on both ends. And I think that was obviously really important in terms of helping kind of turn the tide a bit in the turnover department. And you look at actually in the end result, 15-11 in terms of turnovers. Bucks still on the worst end of that, but the points off turnovers narrowed to 27-24. And I think like 21 of those or something like that, 20 some came in the first half, I think, for the Suns. So just really hurting the Bucks with just some of the sloppiness. And, on the topic of the rebounding, going back to Friday night's game in Chicago, I mean, the Bulls were not playing like extremely small. I mean, they started Tristan Thompson and Nick Vucevic, right? You started basically two centers, and you look at the rebounding numbers in that game. The Bucks, again, 12 offensive rebounds. The Bulls just 5 offensive rebounds. So, again, the rebounding battle favoring the Bucks. And I wish they had paid off. I don't think they got any points. Remember that possession very late in the game where I think they got like 3 or 4 offensive rebounds, and inside of, I don't know if it was inside of 1 minute or inside of 2 minutes, but that late game sequence where they kept getting offensive rebounds, I think probably would have a lot of Bulls fans sort of tearing their hair out. Unfortunately, they couldn't pay it off, but overall, really encouraging to see what they were able to do on the glass. Again, 88% defensive rebound rate on Friday. That is awesome. High 70s and above is you'll happily take that, and a 26% offensive rebound rate on Friday. So, again, I think that's really important. We talked about the Bucks winning the possession battle last year during the playoffs. They just got way more shots than the other team, and taking care of the ball was the other piece of that. Still have some work to do there, but at least on the glass, they seem to be winning some of that. And I think, again, as we try to gauge, like, are the Bucks really like showing the energy and effort, and are they really focused or trying? I think those rebounding numbers can sometimes be a pretty good proxy to just sort of see like with the level of physicality and energy that a team is playing. So unfortunately, the Bucks actually can play a little bit bigger right now, given that you have Serge and some of these other guys available, even though obviously still not close to full strength.
Well, can I just say, to go back to the game against Chicago and that possession you're talking about with all the offensive rebounds, boy, did I want Grayson Allen to hit one of those threes. Oh, my goodness. He just couldn't knock it down. He had a couple opportunities to do so. But nonetheless, they got through that game and picked up the win. You mentioned Serge Ibaka. He's obviously a little bit older now. But the one thing that you cannot deny about Serge Ibaka, he is built. Which reminds me, Built Bar, our friends of the podcast, the best tasting protein bar that has ever been made. Look, I've been talking about the New Year's resolutions. If you haven't listened to me now, well, I don't know if you can be helped, but you should be having Built Bar. If you're looking to a healthy option that tastes good, then Built Bar is the perfect solution for you. That you can have mint brownie, coconut almond. This month you can get the white chocolate cookies and cream as well. They're all delicious, and the new flavors are always coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy after. I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every single time. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
And I should say one other piece of this, Kane, the common denominator of these last two games, Bulls and Suns both shoot only 11 free throws each in each of these two games versus the Bucks, 33 attempts on Friday, 29 today, which the 29 today is all the more remarkable considering the fact that Giannis only took 6. And so, again, it was not just a foul parade on Giannis, which, on Friday, clearly the Bulls were, I would say also becoming more emboldened to foul Giannis just because he had one of his worst free throw shooting games of the season here. Interestingly, just 3 out of 6 today, so he's only 50% today. I was looking at his game log. Since November 26th, those are the 2 worst free throw percentage games that he's had. So basically, call that whatever it is, 3+ months now. His 2 worst free throw percentage games have come in the last 2 games, and I think we've seen a number of like way short arm free throws. Didn't airball any of them, but reminiscent of when he ran into problems a year ago. So again, guys are going to go through, kind of these mini slumps. Let's see if hopefully he can kind of get back on track, because he actually, I think he made 23 out of 25 in the 2 games before the last 2 games. So again, kudos to Giannis. I mean, he's been remarkably consistent over the past few months with his free throw shooting. Again, some blips here in the last couple of games, so hopefully he kind of cleans that up and gets locked back in. But overall, the free throw line certainly a point of emphasis, in an area that the Bucks again have always made a point of not fouling. And our friend Eric Name wrote about on Friday the Bucks really trying to make a point to not foul DeMar DeRozan after he got what do you have, like 18 free throw attempts or something in the Bucks' first matchup with the Bulls. Just a handful of attempts on Friday, and clearly the Bucks were really working hard to not foul him. And I thought it was really interesting. Just there's always a question, obviously, like, do you go over screens, you go under them when you're defending a pick and roll? That was really interesting, the way that the Bucks were going under screens against DeRozan. If the screen was like at the 3-point line, or even sometimes like right inside the 3-point line, you'd see the Bucks guards go under those screens so that they wouldn't be caught in a situation that DeRozan's going downhill with a dump off option to his big man and against whatever big man it is, Bobby, Giannis, or Serge, kind of on their back heels. I thought they just did a really nice job basically saying, like, we're going to try to wall you off at the foul line, but if you want to take a 21-foot jumper, we'll let you do that. But we know that he's not really trying to pull up for shots that are that long. Like, we know he loves to probe, get to the paint, get to the foul line, pump fake, do all that kind of stuff. And I thought the Bucks showed really nice discipline on Friday, just kind of staying down and again doing a really nice job. 30 attempts for DeRozan and 29 points. You'll take that every game.
And Khris Middleton did a very good job late in the game avoiding a foul on Zach LaVine. That was, but nonetheless, obviously it counted. And Jay Crowder actually mentioned after tonight's game how physical this game was, and I think it was. I think this was a really physical game. That's why maybe it's a little surprising that the discrepancy in free throw attempts is so wide, particularly when it wasn't Giannis attempting 15. But Jay Crowder's always a little bit upset. He was upset at Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis is smiling at him, telling him to get back to the bench. It was a pretty comical way to end this game. But staying with the defense, you mentioned, Phoenix scored 122 in this game without their two best players. And they're 53% from the field, 45% from three. And DeAndre Ayton, quite honestly, was incredibly impressive in this game. Some of the shot making, 14 for 19 from the field, 30 points. And I put it in our DM chat during the game. I said he's scoring from all the areas that Bam Adebayo could if he wasn't so timid every time that he played the Bucks. And I don't know like whether Brook Lopez changes this a lot, but DeAndre Ayton's ability to make those shots, he had moments in the finals last year. There's no doubt about that. But this was a different level of confidence. And maybe part of it is that there's just more availability for him to have those shots without Booker and Chris Paul there. I'm not so sure, but I didn't see any shots from him that I was like, okay, this is wild. A lot of them were like the mid-range push shots, hook shots, open jump shots. They're shots that he's probably going to be able to get.
Yeah, interesting contrast to the first game between these teams. In that first game, the Bucks were switching everything, and Ayton was getting switches and putting, wings under the rim on, kind of post ups, alley-oops, dump offs with, again, the Bucks coverage is not being great. So at that game, it felt more like, the Bucks were just basically kind of like trying to take away the guards and daring the Suns to play through Ayton. And they did, and he was great. And this game, I think it was a lot more about, him really just aggressively looking for a shot. He hit a 3 early. I think they said that was his 5th 3-pointer of the season. So it's not something that he's typically done, although he has good mid-range touch. I've always assumed he would add that to his game. So yeah, I think just credit to him. Giannis has had 2 games under 25 points in the last roughly 30 games, both of them against the Phoenix Suns. And DeAndre Ayton, got absolutely torched by Giannis in the finals, obviously last year. And Ayton's outplayed him, especially offensively, each of the 2 meetings between these teams this season. So again, today was just a weird game because it didn't feel like they so much shut Giannis down. He had that really fast start, made 7 out of 7, 17 points at halftime, and then with the foul trouble and just kind of got completely lost in the shuffle a bit of the offense. And again, that's okay, when Khris is going nuts and Jrue Holiday is going nuts. So they didn't really miss him, but definitely, a very rare down game from Giannis. And it just so happens now that basically by far his 2 worst offensive performances of the past few months have come against the Phoenix Suns, the team that he absolutely shredded last finals. And also, he has owned them in the regular season over the past few years as well. I think he averaged close to 40 a game in the regular season last year. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. I don't know that there was like a specific look or defense that they were running against him in this game that, really slowed him down, but certainly, something to kind of file away in case these teams were to meet again in the finals for a second straight year. But again, Bucks are last year they were very top heavy. Right now, because of the injuries, they're very top heavy in terms of their offensive playmaking and creation and scoring. And fortunately, it just feels like every night you've been able to count on all 3 of Giannis, Khris, and Jrue showing up and giving you 20 plus points a game. Ironic that on this game on Sunday, Giannis was the one that couldn't deliver with just 19. But we should talk about Khris Middleton, right? And we've kind of buried the lead here a bit. This was just kind of one of those vintage Khris performances. And fortunately, we've seen Khris Middleton score 40 against the Phoenix Suns in the past. So I guess it wasn't, maybe as shocking as it could have been, but just a kind of masterclass of Khris just getting to his spots, playing with control, knowing how to kind of find the shots that he was comfortable with, obviously doing his usual killer mid-range thing. And those 2 shots that kind of closed it out, the kind of mid-range jumper after Giannis fouls out, and then the dagger to put it to make it a 10-point game, sidestepping. Khris admitted it was a heat check with when he was switched on to Ayton. Just a nice little exclamation point, and hard to believe this game ended up being a double-digit Bucks win, just given how it was looking even in the last few minutes of the 4th quarter. But Khris Middleton, I think, again, I think somewhat fairly has gotten some fair critiques this year for the consistency. But at the end of the day, look, he's at 25-5 now. He's at 20.2 points per game again. He's at 58% true shooting, which probably would surprise some people. That's the third highest true shooting mark of his career. The only two worst years or better years are his last 2 years, actually. He was 58.8 last year and 62% during his kind of career year a couple years back. But he was never at those numbers before that season. And, just very few guys that can kind of give you that level of production. And again, it doesn't even feel like Khris has been at his best for long parts of the regular season. And then you look up and once again, the numbers are, pretty terrific. And the balance of scoring and playmaking is there. And again, on a night like tonight where you get a rare off night offensively from Giannis, is he able to step up? And again, Jrue deserves a ton of credit because he was also just awesome in the fourth quarter. I think, what was this, the first time two teammates have put up 15 plus points in the fourth quarter in some very long time?
And not Giannis,
and not Giannis, and Jrue putting up, 15 plus or 16 plus or whatever fourth quarter points in back-to-back games. Hey, you love to see it. You love to see those guys playing with confidence and playing at such a high level because, let's be honest. I mean, this is what the Bucks need to be a true contender in the playoffs. They can't just be Giannis in a cloud of dust. They need those guys playing at a high level. And obviously we've talked about it. Khris has shown he can play at a really high level in the playoffs, in the finals, deliver huge performances when the Bucks are up, have their backs against the wall. Jrue has not been nearly as consistent in the playoffs, at least last year. So again, I mean, Jrue's numbers, I mean, his career high 3-point shooting numbers, just the confidence with which he's playing, struggled for long stretches tonight, right? I mean, his brother, Aaron Holiday, was getting the better of him for a while, which is not a great sign. But he really grew into the game and obviously made plays, made some free throws as well. Jrue, not always the most clutch free throw shooter, but we've seen that a couple of times now in this past week. He's made some big free throws late. And, again, just keep those guys healthy, let them cook. And obviously, to the extent that they're rounding into form, the offense is just top notch right now.
Also, speaking of Jrue Holiday, probably cutest moment of the season. There might be some other contenders, but the pregame, the Bucks Twitter or social media put up a clip of Jrue lifting his child up. And by the way, this is how tall these humans are. They can just stand on the ground and lift a child up. I could lift a child up and they still wouldn't even be close to the damn rim. But anyway, the kid, I don't know the name, so I'm not, throws it down and the whole Fiserv forum goes up in cheers. And what a beautiful clip. So well done to the Bucks social media there. We'll talk about our friends at BetOnline now. Of course, betonline.net has been with us for a long time and football's done, but basketball is starting to heat up both in college and also the NBA stuff. So you can get the odds, totals, player performance props, and much more at betonline.net. It's the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. And like I said, it's not just basketball, though, because you can get hockey, boxing, UFC, whatever you want. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the trends and action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So the Bucks are 40-25, Frank. To get to 50 wins, that would mean that they would have to win 10 more games out of their final 17. It's a pretty difficult schedule, road heavy. Do you think they get into 50?
I think that's probably right. I took a look at the schedule this afternoon. I was just kind of like, I'm sure other people do this too, where you kind of look at it and you're like, okay, what's like a reasonable, guess? Like, okay, win that one. These next two, maybe split those two, and you kind of eyeball it. And I think I got to like 11-6. Which again, after that, I was kind of like, am I being a little optimistic with this? Especially, you factor in, as was mentioned on the broadcast a couple times, only 6 of the 17 games are at home, which is not ideal, but makes sense. It feels like they've been mostly playing home games here now for like the last 6 weeks or whatever it's been. So, again, we see at times going on the road can kind of help, I think, with the focus. We saw that on that last West Coast trip where they kind of got locked in to a decent amount, and then they come home and lose a couple straight against the Sixers and Nets. So we'll see. Obviously, you get the next game on Tuesday in Oklahoma City. Again, the Thunder are frisky. They've beaten a number of good teams this year, but
Giddy.
Guys, you just got to take care of that. Yeah, your boy Giddy, NBA Chalamet. You got to just kind of take care of business. And Last thing you want to do is go 4-0 against the teams that you just beat this week and then drop one in Oklahoma City against the Thunder. So, but yeah, I mean, tough schedule coming up. I was just on tankathon.com where I usually like to check the opponent or the remaining strength of schedule.
Too late for the Bucks to tank, Frank. It's too late for the Bucks.
Bucks no longer have the hardest schedule in the NBA because they just had such a hard schedule this week.
Yeah,
they've kind of gotten a decent chunk out of the way. They're still the third most difficult schedule. Bulls actually, and again, depends a little. I mean, different methodologies for kind of measuring opponent, find out strength of schedule, given kind of home road things like that. But this one at least had the Bucks third, behind the Bulls and Lakers. Lakers, not exactly a team that probably wants to hear that they have the third hardest or the second hardest schedule left. But again, I mean, I'll coming off a 4-0 week against some very good teams, I'll think back to that Jeff Van Gundy comment that, playing a tough schedule can be maybe a bit, he didn't use the word galvanizing, but, can maybe help a team and force a team to lock in a bit and play at a higher level and maybe not get some of the complacency that certainly we saw the Bucks, I think, suffer from at various points during this season so far. I think some of the losses, especially some of the home losses to middling teams, you kind of look at it and just say, like, guys, seriously, like, can you just get up for these games? And so I'm not going to sit here and say that the Bucks are fully back and cranking on all cylinders. I mean, end day, it's we've seen four games in a row that they've won. Most of those games have had some rough patches, some periods that you would say, okay, there's a lot to go back and look at on the film. But ultimately, especially for the regular season here, it's just about getting reps and cranking out wins. And I think we have seen signs of kind of a little bit more of like playoff mentality. I think, not today because Giannis had the foul trouble, but we've seen some of the fourth quarter minutes, Giannis playing. I think we've seen Giannis play a couple times, like in the last few weeks, like full fourth quarters, basically, where he's not getting that middle of the period rest because the Bucks are like, all right, it's kind of go time. We need to pull this out. And so I think a little more of that focus. We've seen obviously no Wes Matthews today, but Wes be part of some of those closing lineups. I think some of the defense in fourth quarters at least has been more impressive, and obviously the fourth quarter success has been really the kind of biggest part of the story here over these last few games. So I think some encouraging signs there, but again, it's 82 games. You're just trying to crank out enough wins here to put yourself in a decent spot and stay healthy between now and the end of the regular season. But as we've been saying, just given some of the inconsistency and the strength of the East at this point, certainly not a given that you can just kind of sim to end and get home court in the first round or something like that. But obviously that's the goal. And certainly Cleveland, hearing Cleveland today, Jared Allen has a broken finger. He's out indefinitely. The Cavs have been kind of hitting a bit of a rough patch anyway. So that's, I think, one team that maybe is going to have a little harder time keeping track with kind of the teams in the top half of the bracket. But again, certainly still no shortage of teams that are going to be clawing for a top 4 seed right now.
Yeah, the Cavs feel like the team that might drop into the play in there, but the Nets are below 500. They keep losing. Don't know what's going on with my Aussie friend Benjamin. We'll see when he decides.
I think it was a Patty Mills. Patty Mills, your real boy.
Well, we know what's going on with him. He's just getting buckets. That's what he does. Always ultimate teammate. But you did mention the schedule, and obviously the Thunder, but then you have the Atlanta at home, which has been a team that does give the Bucks some troubles in the regular season for sure. And then you're on the road trip with the Warriors, the Jazz, a revenge game for Dante, and then Minnesota, who's been playing pretty good basketball as well. So it's going to be challenging. And then the Bulls back home. So it's going to be another difficult week or so here for Milwaukee. Just one quick note before we wrap this up. So Middleton, 27 field goal attempts today. I was just looking it up on the fly here because when you see the points and then I saw the field goal attempts, I said 27 shots for Khris. That has to be pretty rare. Last time he did that, Game 4 of the finals, he also scored 40 points against the Suns. Pretty memorable game. The time before that, and he only did it one other time for the entire season, playoffs or regular season, had at least 27 shots.
33 against the Nets, right?
Well, no, he had 33.
Or was that? No, that was the Suns, right?
Yeah, he
That was
did
the
it
Suns
against the
game. Yeah,
Suns. He did it in the regular season. 27 shots as well. 27 shots for a unfortunate 14 points in a loss to the Dallas Mavericks. 6 for 27 he was that day, which is that's a lot of shots for Khris to only make 6. It's very Khris Milton like, I have to tell you. It's 6 for 27. That's a tough night at the office.
By the way, it's funny, speaking of 3-point shooting. So as I was looking at Chris's efficiency, I think you see the 3-point percentage. He's at I think still a shade under 37, and you'd say, well, that's part of why it feels like hasn't been at his best this year. But he's averaging a career high in terms of 3-pointers attempted. So it's a bit of that trade-off, right? Of from an efficiency standpoint, hey, even if you're shooting 37 rather than 40%, shoot more of those, right? Khris, you're a great mid-range shooter, but ultimately you shooting 38% on threes is a better trade-off than you shooting 50% or 52% even from mid-range. So kudos to him for that, and he's averaging a career high in terms of free throw attempts, right? For all the talk about the league's new point of emphasis, and Khris has had a little bit of a history of grifting free throws off of getting guys to kind of land on him for threes and things like that. He's done a really nice job, almost 5 free throw attempts per game, and 7 out of 6. I think he was 7 out of 7 tonight. So very good to see. One person who is not buying into 3-point shooting, this is a true end of podcast footnote. Oh, I was thinking the other day about how DeAndre Bembry just never shoots. Basically, if it's not a transition layup or a putback or a cut, pretty much doesn't shoot. And I was looking at it. He has played 51 minutes since arriving in Milwaukee. He has not taken a single 3, which is kind of funny. When I was saying don't put much stock into his 41% 3-point shooting, I was thinking of it because of wow, he's high 20s or something like that.
Has he only taken 9?
He's taken 5 shots in 51 minutes total, 0 3-pointers attempted so far in those 51 minutes. So yeah, DeAndre Bembry really just basically trying to not upset. It's like one of those things. Have you ever played basketball with a bunch of guys who are way better than you, and you're just I don't want to just jack up shots and be that guy. Feels like DeAndre Bembry's just I'm just gonna try to play defense and hit the glass and do a little bit of that, and if I can get a layup, great. But otherwise, I'm not even taking a shot. He's been scoreless in 3 out of the 4 games that he's played, 4 out of 5. He barely played on Friday in Chicago. So yeah, I would go ahead and say that probably once the Bucks get a little healthier, we're not going to see a whole lot of DeAndre Bembry. But again, having a couple guys that you can throw out there to full court press with him and Javon Carter is at least has some value, I'd say.
Well, I did tweet in typical clout chasing Pittman fashion. I tweeted Jrue Holiday's last few games in the fourth quarter, and he's been spectacular. There's no doubt about that. And a Bucks fan tweeted underneath and said, "This is the Javon Carter factor. He's letting Jrue Holiday rest on a few possessions, and Carter's playing some important minutes. He certainly is. There's no question about that. But I noticed when I checked who liked that comment, it appears that Javon Carter's mother liked that tweet. So I'm not sure whether Javon Carter's mother listens to Locked On Bucks, but if you are listening, welcome to the show. We're happy to have Javon in Milwaukee, and I'm fine to roll with the Javon Carter effect. So shout out to Javon Carter. Shout out to his mother. I hope they're both having a lovely start to their week whenever they get around to listening to this podcast. But speaking of podcasts, Frank's boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling will have you covered if you're into the betting world. Locked On Bets. Go check out that podcast. Frank, this was a good weekend. I know. I'm glad you didn't hold it against me for not podcasting on Saturday. In playoff time, we're cranking out weekend pods during playoffs, but it's a bit early.
Yeah. I'm just I see that schedule ahead. I'm hopeful, but you never know, right? I just feel like you get those nice wins against good teams. Hey, let's talk about it.
Wait a second. Are you trying to say you're a fair weather podcaster? Would I have still? I'm sitting here expecting I would have got the same message if they lost. No.
Probably not. Probably not. That said, I was fully prepared to podcast with you last Wednesday when the Bucks were seem to be headed to another loss against the Heat.
Yes.
So, just nights like that, right? You feel like you're rewarded. You're ready for kind of a bummer of a podcast. You're gonna have to take some medicine and work through it, talk through it, and then the Bucks give you a gift and kind of show a comeback. Which, as I think about that too, what was it? I'm trying to remember. Was it 2 years ago? Or was it even last year? Where the Bucks like just never had comeback wins, and part of it was I think, and maybe it was 2 years ago during the bubble season when they
They were
just
just
never
winning.
really trailed, yeah, and so they really didn't have any kind of like comeback wins, and it felt like when they would get down, it would just be like, F it, like we're gonna lose. That's obviously been a bit of a different story this year with this past week being a microcosm of that, and again, not that they're a team that like is constantly like coming back late in games, something like that, but certainly, I think, I don't know. Again, put on our NBA psychologist hat. I don't think it's a bad thing to kind of show that, hey, you get down, a game like this where it just feels like you can't get over the hump, eventually, you just stick with it. You make some defensive plays. Giannis, for all his struggles, it kind of felt like he took some bad angles a few times on defensive plays. But that one play that kind of sparked them taking the lead and ultimately not looking back, that block on Campaign is so sneaky in those little pick and rolls. He's got a really nice floater, and he has that really like sneaky quick little up and under move that we saw a number of times tonight. But that time, Giannis just wipes out that layup attempt, his third block of the game. Yeah, I mean, that was fun to watch. And by the way, we said we were going to get back to Jordan Nwora. Should we, for our final piece here, should we
keep it rolling, Frank? Come on. But you just have to be aware. You just have to be aware that some people might have stopped listening when you said this is a end of podcast line, and now you're getting back into the nitty gritty. But go for it.
We still have Jordan Nwora's aunt and uncle and Javon Carter's mom, and I don't know if Lindell Wigginton's cousins maybe are still listening as well, hoping for a shout out from me, his number one supporter. But I don't know. I mean, the Nwora experience has just been pretty funny this year overall. I think back to a year ago, and he was a guy that, people randomly would just be like, we need more Jordan Nwora. Like, got to give more minutes. Bud's not developing and blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's like, I get it. I get why he's not playing given what they had with their kind of top eight. And this year it's just like, feels like nobody is sort of like on that knife's edge of exciting young player to get this guy off of my television screen as much as Jordan Nwora. And I think some of that's the, some of the shot selection, obviously, with the 3-point shooting, taking shots that are heavily contested. We know he can make them. Some of the decision making, some of the defensive, I don't know if it's even like defensive effort so much as just like he's just obviously just not a physically gifted defender. But I thought Friday night, I remember him setting up Giannis. I think it was a dribble handoff, drove middle, wraparound pass to Giannis, rolling for a dunk. And in this game, a couple times I thought, what was encouraging was when he put the ball on the floor and he went to the basket and he was able to score either in transition or in the half court, attacking with little floaters and trying to go to the rim. And again, I mean, I think with Jordan, obviously he has to make 3-pointers. That's obviously going to be kind of a key thing for him as he tries to carve out a career as a role player. But just 1 out of 6 today, but he was 1 out of 6 for 3, but 4 out of 4 on 2s today. So 12 points on 10 shots, a +6 in 26 minutes. And, I thought held up well enough that, we actually saw him in the fourth quarter for periods, right? Which is saying something. Had the most minutes of anybody coming off the bench, which again, a lot of that's because Wes was out on top of Pat and the other absences today. But, kudos to him, right? He's still a young guy just sort of trying to find his way, and, nice to see him make plays, and good to see, I think, as well, like when he aggressively actually tries to do something beyond kind of fade away from 3 or take tough pull-up shots. I think probably a good thing that sometimes he's rewarded for actually going to the basket.
No doubt. Again, I don't know. The guys will come back. He probably won't be playing all that much, but to have an impact in a game that really matters against a good team and play those fourth quarter minutes is beneficial. And I'm sure he's good for the coaching staff to see him be able to do that, because it has been a little bit of a roller coaster so far this season, which I don't think is necessarily his fault. He's in a difficult position, playing some nights, not playing others. But anyway, I would tend to agree. I think the overall angst with Jordan Nwora not being a nightly rotation player has certainly settled down from the start of the season. But we'll be back through the rest of this week. We already mentioned the game they have Tuesday night against Josh Giddey, the Wizard of Oz. And that's what they're calling him. I don't really know why they were calling him that. But anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. Bucks and Thunder. We'll be able to talk about it tomorrow.
It's a popular film, Kane. Just,
I've heard of the Wizard of Oz.
I feel like if you wouldn't appreciate this because like you're just Australian, but I feel like, anytime I feel like have we ever talked about Harry Kuehl, the former Leeds soccer player, Australian soccer player from like
I don't know if we have, but yes.
I feel like I heard him referred to as the Wizard of Oz because he was, like a kind of creative attacking midfield type player. I actually had a Harry Kuehl Leeds soccer jersey in college at one point. Fun fact. So, I don't know. I guess I'm a supporter of the Australian soccer team there. Mark Viduka, Harry Kuehl. Yeah, you guys had some pretty good players back in the day. But I think just, Australian. Oh, you're creative and you're Australian. Wizard of Oz. There you go. That's just lazy nicknaming 101, Kane. But I appreciate that it probably wouldn't be, as fun for you.
No, I'm not a big fan of it. But anyway, on that note, I am a big fan of this podcast, so I'm going to do it again tomorrow. So make sure
I'm all for Chalamet related Josh Giddey nicknames. That's all I'm going for, which maybe a little tired, but great hair on Josh Giddey. We should probably focus on that more.
He's living a good life. A teenager, imagine that. Anyway,
he lives in Oklahoma though, so
yeah, he's probably killing it there. He's probably Australian, probably doing
king of Oklahoma City. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Probably Stephen. I hope maybe Stephen Adams, fellow down. What do you call Oceania? Oceania. Do you ever use that term?
No.
Anyway,
Stephen Adams, another great fellow. On that note, let's wrap it up. This is getting out of control. Frank, speak to you next time. Catch you guys tomorrow.